Hello humanoids, Halfling Hannah here from Halfling Hobbies, and today's video is going to be an idea and resource dump. If you are looking for some cool out-of-the-box ideas for your current campaign, future campaign, or one-shot, oh boy, do I have some good ones for you. Today we're talking about 7 cool and unique genres of D&D that people just don't explore, and I think you're really gonna love it. Here we go. Alright guys, before we jump directly into all of these genres, I need to tell you that these resources are from Kickstarter. I also am on a stream called Roll for Review. We do every other Tuesdays. The next one is going to be June 29th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, where we review RPG Kickstarters. They can be D&D, they can be Pathfinder, they can be a brand new kind of RPG that's created. We review them and show off the very best ones that are available on Kickstarter. I have compiled my absolute favorites that fit into these different genres today, and I've put the link in the description down below so you can check them out if you want to. They are really, really cool. Also, this is going to probably be a longer video, so I have timestamps for you. If you are interested in a specific genre, you can just skip to that timestamp. That's going to be down in the description below. A genre is just a fancy word for a category. And this category has certain specifications in order for a work of literature to fit into that genre, or a work of music. Country music, very, very different from punk rock, right? So there are many, many genres of fantasy that include magic and all of those fantastical elements that are not high fantasy. High fantasy is the D&D staple. It's what most of the adventures kind of center around. You have this epic group of characters going on an epic quest to defeat an epic whatever it is, right? Very epic. But there are lots of other genres of fantasy that we simply don't explore as often, but can be incredibly fun. And if you've been a DM for a long time and have run a lot of high fantasy, this could be something that is just different and could kind of rekindle your passion for this hobby. So the first genre we're going to look at is low fantasy. So high fantasy means that it's all about the fantasy elements. Low fantasy, however, means there's very little of that in the world as a whole. You can do this in a modern day setting, or you can do this as like a pre-magical or like barbarian-esque Wildlands kind of feel to it. Very much like Horizon Zero Dawn if you have played that video game before. The resource for this one is called, look at my notes. So the resource for this one over on Kickstarter, again, I'm not an affiliate with Kickstarter, I just find these really cool, is Wayfarers of the Far Woods. This is a D&D 5e setting that really focuses on like the primal aspects of D&D. Magic has kind of just come into the world, and your characters that can do magic or have these different abilities, even if it's not specifically casting spells, they are going to be very set apart in a low fantasy setting. If you are interested in this kind of setting, Wayfarers of the Farwood is an excellent resource to pick up, as it's going to kind of give you that setting. However, you can homebrew your own setting just by saying, what would the world look like without any magic in it? Sure, we can still have monsters, we can have all of these things, just no magic. And then how would everyone in this world respond to my party that suddenly has these magical abilities? Are they messengers from the gods and hailed as like these divine heroes? Or are they hunted and persecuted for making deals with the evil entities? Low fantasy settings can be really refreshing if you're just really like oversaturated with the magical stuff. You've done so much of it and you just kind of want to break. Low fantasy could be a really cool genre to explore. Number 2, this one has become very popular lately, especially with the new edition of Curse of Strahd, and that is horror or dark fantasy. I think this has always kind of been popular, and this is the one that people are most likely to explore outside of high fantasy, but it's still worth putting on this list if you've never done it before, because there are plenty more resources other than the ones that have been created by Wizards of the Coast. Curse of Strahd is an absolute classic. I have videos on that if you want to run that one, you want to know what it's about. I've got one about the plot, so you can kind of look over that. But another one would be Out of the Abyss. Also deals with very dark and grim themes to it. You're literally trying to escape out of the abyss, and you've got these horrible monsters that are coming through a portal into the world. Anything that focuses on dark, disturbing, and frightening things fits into the genre of horror and dark fantasy. Some of my absolute favorites are out of the box and really cool. The first one being Dante's Inferno. This is a 5e campaign setting for the epic and amazing Dante's Inferno. And I highly recommend it. It looks absolutely incredible. If you're in for dark, disturbing campaigns, it doesn't get much darker than that. Another one that's perhaps a little light on the lighter side is called Weird Wood. This is not a 5e setting, but could very easily be converted over if you want to do 5e, but I also suggest just giving their system a try. What Weird Wood is this idea that nightmares kind of inhabit their own realm, and sometimes that realm can interpose with the regular material realm, if you would, which would be really easy to kind of put into a D&D. And these dark powers can be used by evil people to give themselves more power so that they can take over. And your players are playing as a group that's a part of a society that's all about protecting and guarding the Weird Wood. Very interesting, dark, disturbing, creepy things, nightmare-esque kind of feel to it. A very different kind of horror genre and game than what we're used to with something like Curse of Strahd, where it's a little more obvious, all of the dark and disturbing things that are in it. Number 3. Romance fantasy. And I'm not talking about like the smut novels. I mean, if you want to do that and you've got a group that's in for that, whatever. That's fine. I'm talking about the focus on relationships, social interactions, and politics. That's what really makes the genre of romance fantasy. When you think romance, you don't need to think necessarily like relationship as you do chivalry, right? So it's that romantic era. So this is interesting, and it started to kind of take off a little bit in D&D, but there really wasn't anything for this genre for a long time. However, there's a new resource out by the Kobold Press, and it looks like it's going to be a really excellent source for romance fantasy, and that is the Blue Rose Adventurers. This is all about political intrigue. You can kind of be a spy, a backstabber, you can be the social elite, and it's all about politics and social interactions. If that sounds like something interesting to you, this genre might be right up your alley. The second one that I have that's a part of this is not a 5e compatible one. Blue Rose Adventurers is 5e compatible. You can plug it right into your game and run a campaign from it. However, there's another one called Court of Blades. It's its own system setup, but it looks extremely intriguing, and it's centered around these different families. And you work for a family, and you're trying to work up the ranks of that family. And so you're trying to sabotage and blackmail and gossip and just take down these other families that are in the royal court. Seems very, very interesting and intriguing, and I would give it a look if you're interested in this fantasy romance genre. Next up is number 4, and this one is a clear favorite with a lot of DMs, and that is science fantasy. Science fantasy genre combines all the best things about science fiction and all the best things about fantasy and kind of smushes them together into this delicious, fun, exciting sandwich that I am super excited to eat. This science fantasy is just everything that you ever wanted with spaceships and magic and space mages and space liches and whatever you want, all rolled into one. Previous editions of D&D did have some space adventures in them that you could do. However, 5e has been very sparse on that. So if you've only ever played 5e, there's not a lot of science fantasy really going on here. We have some guns, but they focus more on like steampunky, old Victorian style guns and not like space guns. You have gifts, which was from before, but they brought in 5e. Again, a lot of thoughts, so sorry. You have gifts that are spacefarers, but you don't really know what to do with them because nothing else has to do with space. Well, this genre has gotten a lot of love from individuals, especially over on Kickstarter. Thankfully, there's a lot more resources being created over there for the space fantasy, science fantasy genre than there is from our official wizards. My absolute favorite, and I am so excited about these two resources, and you really need to go check them out because they're really stinking cool. The first one is Red Sky, and the second one is Comets and Cockpits. So Red Sky is a 5e compatible setting book that includes classes, characters, monsters, and playable races that are all kind of focused on this space idea, and it all takes place inside of a world ship, which is just really stinking cool. And so if you're interested in that, that's an absolutely perfect one. It's already 5e compatible. You don't have to learn a new system or anything. You can just take it. The next one is Comets and Cockpits, which is also 5e compatible, but it takes a different spin on this same genre, which is the grunge genre, like junker ship genre of science fantasy. So this is, you're going to be scrapping parts to try and build your ship to jump world to world, and it's a more grunge feeling to it, but it also has a whole bunch of cool things around classes and characters and monsters and all of that. Highly, highly recommend both of them. Like, look at me. I'm telling you, these are stinking cool, and you should totally try them out. They are 5e compatible. It's Dungeons & Dragons that you already love, and then you include space. It's just the best thing ever. Highly recommend that one. 5. Number 5 is the genre of magic realism. This one's really interesting because it's, we've kind of talked about it before when we looked at the societal problems that are solved with high magic settings. But it's this idea of looking at magic and looking at fantasy from a realistic standpoint. What would it realistically look like to have people that have magical abilities? What would it do to society to have these things? This is, a lot of times can kind of shift into the grim fantasy genre when you start understanding all of the issues and problems that can come out of it, but it's taking off those rose-tinted glasses and looking at the world in a realistic way. So if you want to run this kind of setting, there's probably going to be several elements of homebrew that you're going to have to include in it because there's just not as much resources for this genre as there are some other ones. It's relatively new. However, there are some things that you can use, such as the Monster Hunter Manual. This thing is literally how to track, hunt, and harvest monsters, which in a world in which there are monsters, it would make complete realistic sense that you would be hunting them and harvesting them for different purposes. And that's what this 5e compatible guide really does and showcases. This is a really cool genre that you can actually include in any campaign. You can just think through things, make things a little more realistic, a little less high fantasy. Number 6, another one of my favorites is Dying Earth. This genre is not full apocalyptic, it's like in the process. Something is wrong with the earth and with the planet, and things are changing in a very bad way, and you are responsible for trying to figure out what it is and reversing it before it's too late. Dying Earth is a really interesting campaign setting and kind of campaign plot for your players because it's very immediate and you can do so much with it. My absolute favorite resources for a Dying Earth campaign setting are Eldritch Sands and Weird Wastelands. These two resources are 5e compatible and have the coolest Dying Earth elements in them that you can use. So let's start with Eldritch Sands. Eldritch Sands says that there is a magic that has crept into the world and is beginning to take over the world and corrupt different things. And so this whole setting shows you the different ways in which things are corrupted, the different challenges that come from that, and your players have to try and either just survive in that world or perhaps they're trying to figure out what's wrong and fix it. Number 2, is just simply a resource for Weird Wastelands. These are just a collection of different wastelands that have all of these different things in them, these different monsters that were created out of them that you can put into your campaign or that you can base a campaign around. So you just go through, find the ones that you really like and pick and choose those and put them in. It is a excellent and cool way to bring in a Dying Earth element to a campaign you already have going, or as a plot point for one that you're planning, or maybe even as a one-shot. It would be really cool for them to have to survive or go through these wastelands as a one-shot campaign. And number 7, the last one, and another one of my favorites. This video I just call my favorites. These are just my favorite genres. Anthropomorphic Fantasy. This is very simple, where your PCs, in this case because we're playing Dungeons & Dragons, or your main character is an animal with human-like characteristics. I love this. Comment down below if you read the Redwall series. I was in love with the Redwall series when I was a kid. I absolutely adored it. So this idea of anthropomorphic characters, it's just really close to my heart. There are some resources for this. You had to go out of D&D for 2 of them, which are full campaign settings where you, the character, are animals, but they are totally worth taking a look at, and you can probably get some really cool ideas for them. The first one is Garden of Giants. This is where a garden was left behind by giants and is now inhabited by animals, and the magic in this garden has changed them over time to where they have very human-like characteristics and qualities, and these animals kind of traverse and explore the garden, and they have an overall plot that they're doing, and it's just adorable and super fun and wholesome and a great family game if you have little ones that you want to kind of start introducing to role playing because it's really good for their little brains. And I absolutely adore the art style and everything about it. Number 2 is totally wacky and it's meant to be a short one-shot adventure, and it's Raccoon Sky Pirates. That is just the funnest sentence to say ever. Raccoon Sky Pirates. It's exactly what you think. You are raccoons, you have a flying airship, and you are raiding trash cans in order to get all of the delicious loot. It's fantastic. It's GM-less, so if you don't have anybody that wants to be a GM, you don't need one for this. You're just telling a wacky, fun story together. Highly recommend. And the last one is a D&D resource, and perhaps one of my favorite D&D resources I've reviewed on Roll for Review in a very long time, and that is Unfamiliars. You can play a former familiar as a PC, and this resource gives you everything you need to do it, along with some special class features, special abilities that you would get because of it, and all that jazz. It is fantastic, and I absolutely love it. So tell me in the comments down below, what genre is your favorite that I didn't mention? And if you all really like this video, please let me know, because I've got many more genres and many more resources that I can share with you. Until next time, my friends, may your game have advantage. Halfling Hannah here, signing out. Also, look at all these beautiful sponsors for this video. Aren't they gorgeous? They have the best names. I absolutely love them. You could be one of them too. Just join me over on Patreon.